What's up, you guys? My name is Sarah. I am a weight loss and nutrition coach, and if this is your first time watching any of my videos, my mission is to help people lose weight while also focusing on nervous system regulation and self-esteem, not just to achieve the body of your dreams, but to also thrive in that body. Today we are talking about self-esteem and weight loss through the lens of Nathaniel Branden's book, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. Nathaniel Branden was a psychotherapist. He was a Canadian psychotherapist, and he's considered the father of the modern self-esteem movement. He wrote several books about the topic, but his really foundational work, I would say, is The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. That work, if you've read that, all of his other books relate back to that. Now, his book puts forth 6 actions for daily living that allow you to build a better self-esteem. Those 6 pillars represent the foundation for a good self-esteem. Now, you might be wondering right now, why are we talking about self-esteem when I'm asking about weight loss? Like, I want to know how to lose weight. What does it have to do with self-esteem? What I have found in my own weight loss journey and working with other clients is that typically people who struggle with weight problems also have a low self-esteem. So in this video, I'm going to show how building self-esteem, practicing those 6 pillars that Nathaniel Branden speaks of, actually helps fuel your weight loss journey and makes it easier so that you can keep going and succeed. So what is self-esteem according to Branden? First, I'll say what self-esteem is not. If you grew up in the 90s like I did, you might have seen a skit from Saturday Night Live by Stuart Smalley, where he stands in front of a mirror and he says these sort of positive affirmations to himself like, because I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people just like me. So that is what, when I was growing up and the self-esteem movement was really picking up steam, that's what most people sort of thought self-esteem was. It was basically giving yourself a pep talk every day. And so it's funny how in society, you know, when there's a movement happening, it's like there's the specifics of what the movement is, and then there's how society sort of views it generally, right? And that's really how society was viewing self-esteem at that time. But if you read his book, which I highly recommend you do, Nathaniel Branden defines self-esteem in 2 ways. He says that it's, number 1, a personal sense of competence, meaning it's one's ability to face life's challenges. So note that he didn't say it's one's ability to conquer life's challenges. It's simply one's ability to face life's challenges, which for me really relates back to what I've heard Dr. Becky Kennedy say. She is a parenting coach. She talks about how true self-confidence is not knowing that you're going to succeed no matter what. It's knowing that whether you succeed or fail, you're still okay. Life is full of challenges, so you can see how powerful of a trait that would be to foster in yourself that kind of self-confidence, right? So that's the first part of self-esteem, is knowing that you are able to face life's challenges, whatever they might bring. The second piece is a sense of worthiness, or the belief that you deserve to be happy. Now, if you're like me, and you did not grow up in an environment that was conducive to a good self-esteem, those two, just hearing the definition of good self-esteem might be a little destabilizing to you in the moment. Like, wait, what? That's good self-esteem? Ooh, I don't have any of those things. That's okay. That's why we're talking about it today. But the third point of this slide that I'm showing you is that if you have those 2 things, if you have a good self-esteem, it's really the launching pad for having a great life, right? Because that is the foundation. A good self-esteem is the foundation for a sense of well-being. And when you have a sense of well-being, you want to try more things. And the more things you try, the more challenges you attempt, like good, healthy challenges, the more success you'll find, right? And so that's what we want, right? The opposite of that is if you have low self-esteem and you don't feel like you're up for life's challenges and you're riddled with anxiety, you might sort of lock yourself in the house because you don't want to try anything. So that's an overarching kind of large view of why self-esteem is important. Let's now move to the 6 pillars themselves, just to give you context, and then we'll go into how they relate to weight loss. So the 6 pillars are as follows. The first one is the practice of living consciously. That simply means conscious awareness. You know what your triggers are. You know why they're that way. You're aware of the actions that you do. It's kind of like in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Where it's like the first step of recovery is knowing that you have a problem, kind of a thing. That relates to living consciously. The second practice is self-acceptance. I think the best definition of acceptance that I've ever heard is one that my husband Forrest has said, which is, it's like a simple yes to whatever is. So, if you're struggling with weight loss right now, the opposite of self-acceptance is either looking away from it, denying it, or fighting it somehow. Like, this isn't me, I can't believe this is me, that kind of a thing. So self-acceptance is merely saying yes to, like, yes, I am not at a weight that I want to be at. It doesn't mean that you're complacent. It simply means you're a yes to it. And you're also a yes to getting away from it, to getting out of it eventually, right? Moving beyond it. The third pillar is the practice of self-responsibility. That simply means, it's kind of self-explanatory, but taking responsibility for what needs to be done, right? I've heard in a lot of self-help spaces, they'll say the phrase, no one is coming for you but you. I think that's a really great phrase. The one caveat I will add to it is it's not necessarily saying that, oh, you need to be an island, take care of yourself, no one's gonna help you. It's not that. It's not like this extreme isolationism. It's just simply this idea of, hey, there's gonna be help along the way, but ultimately, the person who needs to do the things to transform is yourself. I'm the only one who can change me. You're the only one who can change you, kind of a thing. The fourth practice is the practice of self-assertiveness. So that's quite simply being able to say yes to what works for you, to say no to what doesn't work for you. So it's standing up for yourself, it's advocating for yourself, and it doesn't have to be yelling, it doesn't have to be mean, it can simply be that works for me or that doesn't work for me. The fifth pillar is the practice of living purposefully. So that sounds pretty big, like, oh, you have to have this big purpose that you're going after. And it does include that, but it can also include just living intentionally, right? Deciding, this is what I want. This is what's important to me in my life that I'm going to focus on. This is what's not important to me. So living purposefully can be as simple as, I have an intention that I want to greet my kids with a smile every single morning and a good morning. Like, I want them every morning when they wake up to receive it's so good to see you this morning. No matter what, no matter how I'm feeling, I want to greet them that way. That can be living with purpose, right? It's not like a big sweeping thing. It's just a simple, I want my kids to get a nice hello every morning. And then the final one is the practice of personal integrity. And integrity sometimes can feel like a weighty word, like it might have a lot of baggage to it. I really like how Nathaniel Branden defines it. He simply says that integrity is knowing what feels right in your body. So you have a moral compass, and he says you know that by what feels right or wrong in your body, and then the integrity piece is living into that. So if it feels wrong to cheat somebody, you don't cheat them. That's a really simple example, but I think you get my meaning. So let's look now how self-esteem impacts decision-making, especially in health. Okay, so self-esteem promotes self-care and better health choices. I have this great example of a friend I had in college. We'll call him JD. I changed names for privacy. So JD was an interesting fellow. He was in my friend group, and what was interesting about him is that he actually had type 1 diabetes. Now, he was a very healthy guy. He was fit. He was a basketball player. But as you may know, type 1 diabetes doesn't really have to do with your fitness level. I don't want to get in the weeds on this. The point is, he was diagnosed in high school with type 1 diabetes. So when he came to college, he had already had practice managing that illness. And part of that illness, part of managing it is balance and like balancing your behaviors. And a big ground zero for any kind of health and wellness is sleep, right? And if you went to college, or even if you didn't go to college, but you remember being college aged, that's typically not a time where sleep is a priority for people, right? It's like the whole I'll sleep when I'm dead thing. And so I just have all these memories of we would be hanging out, our friend group would be hanging out, and inevitably, like on the weekends, we'd be hanging out, and about 9:45 or 10, JD would get up and he'd say, all right, guys, good night, I'll see y'all later. And we would peer pressure him, we would beg him to stay because we loved him so much, but he would always just like, oh no, guys, that's so sweet, I'm gonna go ahead and go to bed. And he'd go back to his dorm room without fail. And that just always bowled me over. I didn't know how he was able to do it. Now, this other caveat about JD that I will mention, he came from a very good family. And I'm not going to say, he didn't come from a perfect family because nobody does. Every family has their struggle. But he just came from a very strong family unit. His mother and father lived with intention. They parented with intention. He had a lot of siblings. They were very close. And so he is a person that I remember even in college being just kind of dumbfounded by how self-assured he was. And to be clear, not at all cocky. Like, he was not cocky. He just seemed like he had this existential okayness about him that awed me because it was so opposite of me. And so you can just see how someone who is that self-assured, someone who has good self-esteem, he knows, you know what, what's best for me, what's going to support me is if I get a good night's sleep. So I'm going to go do that. That's a big deal. Let's juxtapose that with the opposite, someone who did not have good self-esteem, nor did she have good sleep habits. So yeah, people with low self-esteem often struggle to maintain healthy habits. When I was in college in my 20s, it's sad to say, but my self-esteem was really in the gutter. I had, survived an abusive family growing up. And so it just, the natural result of that is I had a low self-esteem. And how that really showed up in my life, I mean, it showed up in many ways. I'm not going to list them all off for you right here. But the one way that showed up time and time again was sleep. Sleep was always the first thing to go in my life. Like anytime something came up, if I had a job, I needed anything, sleep was just, oh, fine, I'll stay up late and get that done. Or, oh, I'll wake up well before dawn and get that done, which seems like that might be a good thing in the moment. But over time, when you're chronically sleep deprived, that's not a good recipe for health. And that's what I see. So that's an example in my life. And I would also say I was chronically sleep deprived through my 20s. That was also when I was struggling a lot with weight. That's a complex issue. Like there's all these other things I was doing also that wasn't supporting my weight loss, but sleep, like I said, ground zero. So as you can see, just from the examples I've given, self-esteem and behaviors really influence each other, right? So positive self-esteem is going to lead to positive behaviors. Low self-esteem is going to lead to negative behaviors. My example for this is a client that I worked with. We'll call her Catherine. When she started working with me, she was also chronically sleep deprived because she dealt with insomnia, like very bad insomnia. So the very first thing that we did was increase her protein. When she increased her protein, she was able to sleep 7 to 8 hours a night, which is a really massive shift, right? So she increased her protein. She succeeded at that. She started to sleep more. As she started to sleep more and feel better about just succeeding at eating more protein and actually enjoying it, she started to make other adjustments in her life. So she started to say no to things that didn't serve her, specifically things that would wear her out at the end of the night. She also started to focus on including more fun activities in her life that fueled her, that made her feel good about herself. And so the more she did these positive behaviors, the more her self-esteem flourished, the happier she became generally, and ultimately she achieved her weight loss goal rather, and then she went on to challenge herself with more exciting things. So we've talked about self-esteem and weight loss. Let's talk about self-esteem and positive habits. Have you ever been on a diet and someone invites you to like a holiday party and you suddenly become riddled with anxiety because of one main fear? You don't trust that you're going to show up to that party and stick to your plan. You are horrified, like just horrified that you're not going to be able to do what you want to do, and it's going to completely derail your weight loss attempt. Yes, this perfectly ties into what Nathaniel Branden was talking about with trusting yourself, right? Trusting yourself to be able to cope with life's challenges. Every time you make a good choice, that builds self-trust. So one example I have of this is a client I had named Kara. She no longer works with me. She hit her goal and she's moved on. Her job required her to meet with clients weekly to have lunch meetings, essentially. And so when she first started working with me, that was a big point of anxiety for her. She's like, I want to do everything that you're going to ask me to do, Sarah, but I'm very nervous that I have these meetings and I'm going to get to the meetings and I'm not going to make good choices. So what we started doing was game planning ahead of the meetings. So she and I would meet, we would pull up the restaurant that she was going to eat at, we would look over the menu and we would decide together, like, okay, what of these foods sounds good to you and which ones are going to serve you on your journey? And then she would go to the meals and then she would succeed. She would execute on the plan. So she already knew what she was going to eat. She would choose it. She would successfully have her meeting, and then she'd come back to me the next week and she would progressively lose weight. Every time she did that, that built self-trust for her. And it built and built and built until it finally got to a point where I remember we were before the holidays. I asked her, like, well, Kara, do you want to meet so we could game plan the holidays? And she was like, no, I got it. And she did. And then before I know it, I mean, we didn't game plan before every single meal because at some point she got so used to doing it and so practiced and became so confident in herself that she knew she could go anywhere And there might not be a ton of food that she could eat, but she was okay with that. And she felt confident that she'd still stick to her plan. So you can see how making those good choices, building self-trust, how this links to Brandon's practice of living consciously, right? Becoming aware of the thing you're nervous about and then shining a light on it, digging into it, parsing through it until you figure out how to overcome it. And there might be points along that way where you fail, where you make a mistake, but you're gonna keep going. And every time you make a good choice, every single time, that just increases the trust and builds on your momentum. So good choices means more motivation, means better habits, just means more good choices. So positive habits build self-esteem, but also so does weight loss. Weight loss itself builds self-esteem. So weight loss changes more than just the body. So, it might be kind of obvious to say that weight loss can enhance self-esteem, but I'll just tell you, I have seen hundreds upon hundreds of before and after pictures. And the thing that stands out to me the most about those pictures is the look on the client's face at the beginning versus the look on the client's face at the end. In the after picture, after they've succeeded, they look like they could storm a castle. I mean, they look like they could push over a brick wall, storm the castle, and just seize the day, come back victorious, no matter what the challenge is, right? And I believe that's really because, succeeding at anything boosts your confidence, but there's something about succeeding with your body that's just next level. So I think for me, obviously weight loss for me was enhanced my self-esteem, but I remember taking my first yoga class and I had struggled with low back pain for years. And the only time that it felt good was when I got a massage, when I went to a massage therapist. And it's lovely going to massage therapists. I still go to them today. I love going to them, but there's something deeply disempowering about feeling like you have to have somebody else do something for you with your body. But the moment you realize, wait, I can do this myself, this is amazing. And so that's what weight loss can do for you. Now this ties perfectly into Brandon's pillar of self-responsibility, right? It's that idea of you having the self-efficacy to do it yourself. Makes me think actually of the third Harry Potter book, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, or the movie. I'm sorry if this is a spoiler alert. It has been 20 years, so maybe just watch them or read the books. But in one of the climactic scenes in the third book is where Harry is attacked by a Dementor, and he and Sirius Black are in imminent danger of death, basically. And someone comes to save Harry, and he's convinced that it's the spirit of his father has come to save him. But we find out later, actually in this climactic scene, we actually find out that it's not his dad, it's actually Harry that came to save him. And I think that story overlays so well on this idea of self-responsibility and that idea of like, no one is coming to save you but you. And again, it's not that you can't get help from the community, but it's just that idea that nobody can transform you but you. And what's really wonderful about that is that because nobody can do it but you, it means you can do it. Like life just simply would not be set up the way it is if you did not have that capability within you right now to do it, right? So going back to those before and after pictures, keep in mind that every single one of those people in those pictures that I've seen, they have all lost weight by changing their eating habits. And if there's anything I know, it's that kind of weight loss is all about taking one step at a time, building on one success at a time. It's not done in one fell swoop. Each one of those clients experienced those small wins that built self-trust, and they can now take that self-esteem, that self-confidence, and they can apply it to other areas of their life. All right, so let's look at this reciprocal relationship that I've been talking about. So if you look at the slide somewhere on the screen here, each positive action that you take results in higher self-esteem. The higher your self-esteem, the more positive actions you take. The higher your self-esteem gets, the more positive actions you take. So it just keeps looping more and more and more. You can see how this loop could really strengthen any transformational process that you're attempting across all areas of wellness. So ultimately, focusing on self-esteem helps us improve both our mental and our physical health. That's pretty big. So here are some practical tips for doing that. You might be hearing this and saying, this is great. Now, how do I do this? So the practical tips. Number one, start with small, achievable goals to build momentum. When I was getting certified through Precision Nutrition, that was something they emphasized time and time again. you should be giving your clients activities that are so piddly, like not activities, homework that's so piddly that their first instinct is to scoff at it and be like, I can do that. What else? But that's because those small wins create this on-ramp of success. Second thing, practice self-compassion to counter the inner critic. I have talked about this in so many videos. I will talk about it in so many more videos. By giving your critic a different job by saying, hey, inner critic, I don't want to hear any more criticism. I want you to instead speak to me like a kind, loving mother. By doing that, you will end up with my computer's about to die. Ooh. You will end up building basically your own corner man internally, to use the boxing and MMA term, and that's what you need. Like, that will very much so help your journey. The third piece is use mindfulness to become aware of your emotional triggers around eating. Mindfulness sometimes can feel like a really big, weighty word, but it's simply a simple practice of mindfulness that you can do is called noticing and naming. When you find yourself doing something, a behavior that you know doesn't serve you, notice it and name it. That's all you need to do. Just notice and name. And then finally, celebrate small wins as a way of reinforcing positive self-esteem. So even if it's as simple as, I decided to snack on cucumbers instead of chips while I was making dinner tonight, that's a small win, but it's a big win. If you do that every single day for the next year, you're gonna lose weight. Okay, our big takeaways. So number one, by expanding your scope to include much more than just the number on the scale. So focusing on self-esteem, focusing on small wins, that will actually help you create a lasting cycle of success in your weight loss journey and beyond. What can you do today? What you can start to do just right now is reflect on how you actually view you and your weight loss journey. Do you feel capable of succeeding at this, or does it feel too big for you and you have anxiety around it? I'll give you a little hint. This is a perfect role for a coach. If you're feeling like, man, I am not up for this at all, then a coach you can actually borrow the confidence you need from your coach while they're working with you. So that's just a hint. But for now, just rate yourself. Do you feel confident, or are you like, no, I think my self-esteem might be in the gutter, like what you were talking about with you? And if it is, that's okay. Realizing that, you can actually take steps to intervene. And then finally, what's next? If you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend you check out my other full video called Introduction to Nervous System Repair. That's where we talk about, as you can guess, the nervous system. And then other than that, like and subscribe if you find any of this information helpful. Feel free to share it with other people if they also are finding difficulty on their weight loss journey. And I'll say goodbye from there. Take care, friends.